For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. The cold metal floor bit into his cheek. James opened his eyes. He shifted, but his wrists were bound behind him. His head throbbed. The last thing he remembered was the peace conference applause, then blackness. A door hissed open. He turned his head and froze. She walked, skin the color of a rain-soaked leaf. Her hips moved with control, not invitation. I was expecting more fight from Earth's top. Negotiator, she said. James blinked hard. Who the hell are you, Mint Valcor? She said simply. Commander of the Avenari infiltration block. His mind kicked into gear. Minta, not a myth. Then she was real. Your leverage human, nothing more. She stopped in front of him, studying him like a biologist with a new specimen. Will Berensoming you back. Your governments want their golden boy breathing. James smirked, despite the ache in his jaw. You just made a mistake you won't recover from. Her lips curled. You're bold. I like that. It makes the disappointment hit harder. She circled him slowly. You think Earth will send fleets for you? She asked. They'll send a check better. Hope they send bullets. She stopped behind him. You'll cooperate, she said. If not for yourself, then for your species. James didn't answer. There was a silence, long and taut. Then Mina stepped back and clapped once the wall behind her shimmered. A panel slid open, revealing a control room, a wide observation deck, and at least 3 armed Avenari, elites, standing stone still. She turned on her heel and faced them. This is the human, she announced. Subject 170A. You will not speak to him. You will not touch him. If he escapes, your blood washes this floor. Then to James, almost casual. Enjoy your view. We begin interrogations at first light. She turned and walked out the door. Sealed. James looked around, his breath slowed. He'd memorized the camera angles, the wall seams, and the vent measurements before the first hour passed. At 0400, the door unsealed. With a soft hiss, Ma walked in alone this time. You've been up all night, she said, almost amused. Didn't want to miss our first date, James replied. She stepped forward and tossed something small to the floor in front of him, a thin silver band humming faintly. You recognize it? James stared. Restraint collar. Correct. Used for volatile specimens or those with delusions of dominance. I don't, she replied, stepping closer. I think you're unpredictable, which is worse. She circled him again. No armor, just that high-collared black uniform that clung to her figure like it had been engineered to make men lose focus. James didn't lose focus. Montara stopped in front of him, lifted a small tablet from her belt, and tapped it once. A holographic image spun in the air. His full biological scan. Muscles, nerve pathways, organ readings. Do you know what this says about you? She asked. Tone cool and condescending. Tell me, he said dryly. I love bedtime stories. It says you're barely above our servant class. Bone density, average reflex delay within margin error, muscle symmetry, unremarkable. James met her gaze. You went through all that trouble just to neg me, just to understand what kind of animal I'm dealing with. Her hand hovered over the collar again. I don't expect much. You're a blunt tool. She didn't expect him to move, but he did before she could react. He surged forward to kiss her. Her hands went up, maybe, to stop him, but they froze in the air, and she didn't pull away when he broke the kiss. Her breathing was uneven. You done posturing? He asked. She slapped him. He didn't flinch. She stepped in again, their bodies nearly touching. You think that impresses me? No, he growled. I think it makes you curious. And he kissed her again. He took her bottom lip between his, felt her tremble. Her fists balled in his shirt. She shoved him back against the wall but didn't let go. Her lips crashed into his clothes, came off in shreds. Armor was gone, protocols forgotten. Her nails scored down his chest. His mouth found her neck. She bit his shoulder. He pinned her wrists above her head with one hand, and she didn't resist. She arched into him like she needed to prove something. They didn't speak when it was over. Minta lay beside him on the cold floor, skin flushed, chest rising and falling fast. And when she finally stood, she didn't bother dressing fully. She grabbed her uniform jacket, slung it over one shoulder, and walked out barefoot. The door sealed behind her. James stared at the ceiling. Lips bruised, wrists, raw chest marked by her teeth. She'd come in to break him instead. She left wondering what she'd awakened the next morning. The guards outside James's cell straightened. When the chamber door opened with a hiss, they weren't expecting her. Ma Valcor walked past them, too calculated, but anyone with military instincts would know something was off. James was already standing when she entered, shirtless, arms crossed his. Knuckles were bruised from punching a steel wall an hour ago. She didn't speak. At first, her eyes flicked to the corner of the room where a thin medical scanner blinked in idle mode. His scan results were still looping on the small display he broke. The silence. "You're walking funny." Matter's jaw tightened. "Your anatomy is incompatible," she said flatly. James stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "No," he said. "It just overruled your arrogance." She turned, sharply tapped her wrist console, and a pair of thick restraints dropped from the ceiling like vipers put them on. She said, "James, didn't move to punish me or protect yourself, Minta?" Didn't answer. James tilted his head. "Still don't know which of us is the prisoner, do you?" She crossed the space between them and slammed her palm against his chest, pushing him back into the wall. "You're a test subject, human," she hissed. "One I was foolish enough to underestimate. Sounds like you're still doing that." Ma reached up, locked one restraint around his right wrist, then the other. He stood there, arms pulled just enough to keep him stretched. "And still you're bleeding," James said. "That your punishment for letting a human ruin your ego." "You didn't ruin anything," she snapped. He leaned forward into the restraints. "Then take these off and prove it." She backed away. "This was a mistake," she said. Quietly, James laughed once. "That's the first honest thing you've said." She turned and walked toward the exit but paused at the threshold. "I'm transferring you to isolation," she said, temporarily afraid of what your soldiers will say when they see you limping past them again. Her back straightened. "You're done here." He leaned his head back against the wall, letting the moment stretch. "No," he said, "you are." She left, and for the first time in hours, James smiled across the hall. Two guards whispered near the internal corridor feed. "Commander looks like she fell off a hoverbike." One muttered, the other smirked. "I think she rode something else." They both laughed, then went silent when Mentara's face appeared on the overhead monitor. Mena entered her private quarters, locked the door. She peeled off her uniform top and looked at herself in the mirror, marks faint, but there across her thighs, down her waist over. Her collarbone memories of the night clawed back into her skull. Still under her skin, she sat slowly, carefully, and stared at the data pad in her hand. One command, and he'd be moved to high security orbit. She didn't tap instead. She closed the pad and leaned back, her body ached, but somewhere deeper, darker, more dangerous. She wanted him again. The camera feed was never supposed to be recording. Mint had sealed. The chamber scrambled local sensors, but now on a black market terminal deep in the underdecks of the Unary Citadel, a stolen drone eye played something different. It was sex footage, blurry but unmistakable. A human male, an Avenari commander, and at the center of it all, Commander Minta Valcor, naked, pinned and gasping. The watcher didn't breathe until the video looped. Then they tapped out a message subject. Leverage 2. Commander Minta Valcor message. If you want this to stay buried, deliver full intel on Earth fleet specs by midnight. No reply equals full release. Manta read the message at 703 words into it. She stopped breathing. The air in her private quarters thickened with fury. Her teeth, clenched so tight her jaw ached, she accessed the metadata, the drone tag washers, but had been rerouted through 6 shadow servers. Someone inside her own command structure had lifted the footage. Who, why now? And worse, how long had they been watching? She went to the cell. The guard straightened. When she stormed down the corridor, one opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a gesture. The cell door opened without her needing to speak. James was seated on the edge of the bunk shirt, off arms free now. When she entered, he didn't stand, he just looked up at her. "I'll ask this once," she said, eyes locked on his. "Did you leak it?" James frowned. "Leak what?" "You know what," she snapped. He stood, closing the distance between them in 2 steps. "If someone's watching us, it's not me. Why would I? I've got nothing to gain and everything to lose. Then who else would have access?" James paused. "Anyone on your crew with grudge or ambition?" Ma turned away, sharply, pacing like a caged animal. "They'll use it, the footage. It's already in play. You're being blackmailed. James crossed his arms. They want Earth tech. She gave him a withering look. Of course you're a diplomat. Your brain's more valuable than your body. That's debatable, he muttered. She shot him a glare. We need to find who pulled the data, James said, and fast once it hits the council. You're done. Her spine straightened. Then we do it together. You'll cooperate. James raised an eyebrow on one condition. What? No more chains. Mintra's face darkened, but after a long pause she nodded. Fine, but if you betray me, you'll kill me. James finished. I'm getting used to hearing that she keyed her wrist console. I'm giving you limited clearance. You'll access my private network, trace every packet routed through drone protocols in the last 48 hours. You sure you trust me? Digging around in your secrets, no. She said, but we're past secrets now. Back in her command room, the lights dimmed automatically as the console scanned. 4 encrypted logs. James leaned over the interface. Mint watched him work. Jaw tight, arms folded. Hated that she needed him. He found something after 20 minutes here. Signal piggybacked through a comms relay. 6 decks down, someone rerouted it through. Your medical logs, that's how they got your buff feed. Mint froze my med team, no. James said, just someone smart enough to plant a ghost loop. He pulled the log up. Encrypted user ID. You know what this looks like? Someone inside, she said, voice sharp. Close. Enough to access personal logs, smart enough to hide their tracks. James turned to her. You have enemies. I have everyone, James. This empire doesn't reward loyalty. It rewards leverage. She stepped closer together. They moved. Which means, if we don't find them, I get exposed and they won't stop there. Once they've bled me, they'll gut you. He stared at her for a long second. You knew this would happen. The second you touched me. No, she said. I thought I could control it. You really think this is still about control? He said. Ma wasn't sure anymore. They traced the leak to a secure terminal on Deck 11 deep in the residential wing used by elite command officers. They hadn't made a mistake. Not yet. James and Ma stood in the corridor, just outside the access point, weapons concealed under their belts. Once we go in, he said, we're exposed. No more hiding behind rank or protocol. She met his eyes. Then we don't hide. The room inside was empty, but the terminal was still warm. James stepped to it, scanned the recent keystrokes, then froze. His voice was low. They're still logged in. May was already moving, weapon drawn, because the real fight hadn't started yet. But the terminal room was a dead end. The body on the floor was fresh, a green-skinned Avenari male, face-down, uniform slashed open from neck to spine. Minta crouched beside the corpse. Lieutenant Desch. She muttered, communications tech, no records of ambition. James scanned the room, hands twitching to reach for a sidearm he wasn't allowed to carry, which means he wasn't the blackmailer. No, Mintara said, standing. He was the pawn. Somebody planted the drone feed through his console and then cleaned up after they're sending a message. James said, they want you scared. She turned to him, eyes sharp. They'll need to do better, but James saw it. Ma was a tactician always, the apex in the room, and now someone was 3 moves ahead. That rattled her. She keyed. A lockdown into the console scrambled the logs, and they left the room back to her quarters. Only there was safe enough to plan the moment the door sealed. James exploded. They know we're close. This wasn't about blackmail anymore. This is a political purge, and you're the warm-up act. She moved past him, poured a measure of clear liquid into a glass of Anari Fire vodka, if he remembered right, and drank it in one tilt. You think I don't know that? James grabbed the glass, slammed it down. I think you're pretending this doesn't matter, but it does. You're slipping here. Yes, flared. Say that again. You're slipping. You thought you had me in chains. Now you're hiding in your own room while someone outmaneuvers you from the shadows, and you still haven't admitted the truth. She took a step forward. What truth? That you want me here? He said. Not for leverage, not for politics. You want me and you hate it. She hit him. His head turned with the blowjaw tight. He looked back at her. Feel better? No, she said, but I will. And then she kissed him. She unzipped his shirt slowly, fingers brushing every inch of his skin like she owned it. James grabbed her wrists, spun her, pinned her to the wall. You think you're in charge here? He said, his breath hot against her ear. That this is your game? She twisted lips, finding his neck, biting down. It was my game until you ruined the rules. Clothes fell away like ash and fire. James pulled her down onto the floor, onto the thick carpet underfoot. He kissed her throat, then lower, savoring the way her breath caught. "Still soft and useless human," she whispered, taunting, even as her voice hitched. James didn't reply. He showed her what started as power turned into precision. Every movement measured, slow dragging out, every second until she arched under him, her fingernails leaving angry red lines across his shoulders. He held her there at the edge again and again until her voice cracked and her hand stopped trying to push him away and started pulling him closer. When she came, she bit his neck hard enough to draw blood. And then she went silent. James collapsed beside her, both of them soaked in sweat and breathless. She turned her head slowly, looked at him. "What the hell are you doing to me?" she whispered. "Whatever you let me." She didn't sleep. That night she wasn't in control anymore. She wanted him, and that changed everything. The alert hit Manta's calm at 6:03 emergency inspection. High Council inbound 12 hours notice. She stared at the screen motionless. A visit from the High Council was rare. This was a hunt. Someone had reported something. She turned to the man still in her bed. James was awake, watching her. "You're going to tell me what that is," he said quietly. "An inspection," she replied, already pulling her uniform. From the wall hooks and a trap, he sat up, the sheets falling from his torso. How bad? Council level. Bad. James stood across the room in 3 strides and stopped in front of her. "You need to move me. I can't. All high-value detainees must be registered and accounted for. You think they'll ask? I think they'll scan." She moved past him to the console, fingers flying across the holographic keys. James stepped closer. "What are you planning?" Her eyes never left the screen. "I'm going to hide you in plain sight." He frowned where she turned, met his eyes. "In my quarters by 715. Her quarters were stripped of anything suspicious, extra bedding gone. One glass on the table, tactical reports, opened on screen, half read, highlighted in crimson. She gave James a disguised, standard Tech assistant gear. "You'll act mute," she said, adjusting the ID chip embedded in the collar. "No speech, minimal eye contact. You're on a disciplinary secondment for protocol violation." "Do I look subservient enough for your council?" he asked. "No," he smirked. "You like that by 9:30. The council shuttle broke the atmosphere. The entire base snapped to protocol alert. All corridors cleared, every officer in black ceremonial garb. James watched from behind tinted glass, hands behind his back like a good little assistant. They arrived in silence, 3 members, all old, all dangerous. The central figure stepped forward. "Counselor Vaughn, Commander Valcor," he said. "We trust the delay did not compromise your readiness." "Never, Counselor, you understand. Why we're here I do not presume," she said perfectly. "Still, then let us make it plain. There is reason to believe your command is compromised." She didn't blink. "By whom?" "By what?" Varn said, voice smooth as a blade. "Infiltration. Propaganda weakness." Minta held her ground. "We are fully secure. Then you'll have no issue granting us full access to your logs, quarters, and personnel. My data is open. My staff will comply." Varn smiled faintly. "Including your assistant." She stiffened. "He is not a soldier. He has no clearance." "Then he has nothing to hide." James stepped forward without being summoned, bowed his head. Counselor Vaughn eyed him with mild distaste. "Mute." She nodded. "Penal restriction. Level 3. Varn stepped closer, peered into James's face. "We begin in your quarters," he said. Mentera's heart punched against her ribs. This was the moment. The inspection dragged. Counselor Nera scanned every data pad. She lingered on the sleeping cot, tracing the covers with gloved fingers. Varn opened drawers. Tamar, youngest of the 3, stood near James, watching him as if he were a cracked vase. Manta answered every question with precision and clipped efficiency. It was perfect, too perfect, and they knew it. At the end, Vaughn turned slowly to face her. "One final matter, Counselor," and anonymous transmission reached the Triarch's review channel. "This cycle, no message, just a data package." She held her breath. The file was corrupt, unreoverable. "Relief." "No, not relief, bait." "Curious," Varn continued. "Isn't it, Commander, that someone with your clearance was targeted for anonymous sabotage?" Mater's jaw tensed. "I wasn't aware." No, Vaughn tilted his head. "You've always been efficient, cold, clean, but lately the reports are different. Sloppy, emotional, some even say distracted." James's shoulders tensed. Varn's eyes sharpened. Tell me, Commander, is there a reason you've been sleeping with your prisoner? Dead silence. She stepped forward. Yes, Ma held his stare, because I'm baiting him for intel Earth seduction tactics you think will be Ethemans with strategy. No. We beat them by knowing what makes them bleed. Varn studied. Hair a moment longer than toe. James, is that true? James didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee. Varn sneered. Fascinating. He turned back to the others and the review. No findings that night. Mare turned to her quarters, hands still shaking. James stood in the center of the room, arms crossed. You kneeled, you lied. They stared at each other. You think they bought it? He asked. She gave him a look. They'll keep watching. He moved toward her slow. Then let them mint. Didn't pull away when he reached her. She leaned into his touch, closed her eyes and whispered, I almost lost everything today. James kissed her. You haven't lost me. He said. It leaked at 2007 local time. One file, 10 seconds. It showed two bodies. One human, one unmistakably of Anari, entwined, moving, moaning. There was no audio. The video hit military channels first, then the OIE council threads, then the classified message boards by Orog 30. It was on the Blacknet, captioned, When your commander forgets who's in charge. It was viral before sunrise. James heard the alert first, his datapad blinking, a warning read, network breach. He bolted upright in Mintara's bed, the glow of the screen painting, his chest in flickering crimson. She wasn't there. He found her in the adjacent room, fully dressed, standing at her console, watching it loop over and over the video. He crossed the room. Mintra. Nothing. Mintra, say something. Her voice, when it came, was sharp enough to cut metal. They all know now. He moved beside her. The image continued to loop. I'm sorry, James said, his voice low. She turned to him. Her eyes weren't wet, but they were wide. You think I care that they saw me? She hissed. I care that they saw me weak. You weren't weak. She shook her head. They don't care about love or heat or biology. They care about power, and I just showed them what it looks like when I surrender it. You didn't surrender, James said. You shared it. Her laugh was bitter. There's no such thing in Avanari Command. The console chimed again. Another alert. Emergency summons. Council chamber. 8 AORA. And beneath it, detained subject 1 and 17A to be extracted. For formal review. They're going to drag you in, Monero whispered. Use you, parade you in chains, let them. James said no. He continued. Let them bring me in, let me speak, I'll take the hit. Tell them I seduced you, that you were compromised, unwilling. You think I need your protection, she said. I think it's not about what you need anymore. James said, it's about what you can't undo. She stepped back, fists clenched. They'll ask if you've turned. If you're loyal, they'll question everything I've ever built, she added. James touched her hand. Then let's burn it down before they do. They entered the council hall at exactly 800 hours. May stood in the center. James behind her, bound in ceremonial shackles. Vaughn rose from the tribunal bench. Commander Valcor, he said, voice echoing, we have seen what you have done. Mint raised her chin. No denial. Vaughn said, circling, none. You allowed a human to violate your body. James opened his mouth, but Mater lifted a hand, stopping him. I invited it, she said, voice steady. I wanted him. Murmurs as rippled across the chamber. Varn's eyes narrowed. You confessed. Then treason, dereliction, corruption. No, she said. I confess to being more than what this empire allows. She turned to James. He broke me, and in doing so made me stronger. Varn's expression curdled. This isn't poetry, Commander. This is court-martial. Then try me, she said. Strip my rank, tear off my badge, but you'll never erase the fact that I chose him, and I do again right now in front of you. Varn's voice dropped. Then you are no longer a nary. James stepped forward, chains clinking. She was never just a nary, he said. That's what you hated, that she dared want more than conquest, that she loved something you don't understand. Vaughn raised a hand. Take them both, he ordered. Reprocess the male, exile the traitor. The guard stepped forward. Weapons drawn, James reached for Mantara, but 3 shock sticks drove him to the ground as they dragged him away. Her eyes locked on his. Don't break, she mouthed, and then he was gone. Hours later, Mina sat alone. Her uniform was gone, replaced with neutral robes. Her staff disbanded. She'd lost everything except him if he survived. She pulled a small unregistered data spike from the lining of her sleeve, a failsafe she'd built for this exact kind of failure. She keyed in. 3 encrypted words: activate Sentinel code priority asset. 117A. The screen flashed, a single message returned in motion. She leaned back. Her hands trembled. Her pride was shattered. Her future was gone, but for the first time her heart was clean. James sat in darkness, his wrists bound in magnetics and his ankles bolted to the steel floor. He shifted the manacles, biting into his wrists. His shoulder ached from the shock stick, his lip was split. He could still feel Manta'ara's voice echoing in his chest. Don't break, he wouldn't. But he didn't know how long that promise would last. In the cockpit, guard Captain Vesh tapped the shuttle's nav screen. Ada, 20 minutes clear. Sky, no patrols. The co-pilot, a green-skinned junior with a nervous twitch in his eye, frowned, thought. This was supposed to be high-sec escort. Shouldn't we have a drone wing? Vesh grunted. Orders changed. Classified downgrade. The junior pilot shifted. Why, he's not just some grunt. No, he's worse. Vesh said he made her fall. The co-pilot didn't. Ask who her was. Everyone knew back in the prisoner bay. James closed his eyes and counted heartbeats. 12 minutes in, something shifted. The engines dipped just slightly. Then static burst through the intercom. The pilot's voice crackled. Control. We've got. Hold external contact, unknown origin, doesn't match any. Then silence. James opened his eyes and smiled. Drones dropped from cloud cover, each one armed with ion disruptors and anti-pulse hulls. They flanked the shuttle like vultures but didn't fire. Instead, they jammed the navigation-locked comms, cut power in the cockpit. Vesh cursed shields down, manually rerouting the bay lights. Blinked, then went red. The override sequence activated. James heard the sound before he saw it. Someone stepped through. The guard raised a pulse cannon. Target confirmed. Priority asset. Let's move. The magnetic manacles disengaged with a pop. His wrist dropped free. James blinked, stunned. Who sent you? He asked. The soldier tapped the side of their mask, female and unmistakably. Avenari, but not my. One of her guards, the silent one, the one who always watched, never spoke. She offered a small nod. She paid me in secrets and a debt I owed. James hesitated, then grabbed the pulse rifle from the wall. Let's finish this. The escape was surgical. 3 guards stunned, pilot sedated. The co-pilot fled before the 3rd drone even landed. James and the woman, codename Rena, dropped from the shuttle. Mid-flight, caught by a cloaked skimmer trailing below them. Like a ghost ship, as the transport shuttle limped away empty. The black sight beacon marked it as transport lost wreckage. Assumed prisoner, presumed dead, just as planned. Rena tapped the nav panel. She's waiting. James turned to her, where a grim smile, home, or what's left of it. Maz Estate was already under siege, but the cellar levels, the old combat training wing beneath the structure, remained untouched, forgotten. That's where she waited when James stepped off the skimmer. She was there, dressed in tactical gear, hair tied back, no makeup, no rank pins. She walked up to him, and before he could speak, she pulled him into a fierce, searing kiss. When they broke apart, her voice was ragged. You weren't supposed to get hurt. You paid a guard to break me out. You knew I'd be tortured. I knew they'd try, she said, but not while I still had one piece left to move. He looked around. We have no army, no reinforcements. What now? We take it back, she said. James raised his rifle. Us 2. Us 3, Rena said, stepping up behind them. I'm not missing this. Mintara smirked, her eyes burning. I'm not fighting for the Empire anymore, she said. I'm fighting for what I claimed. Her hand found James's fingers, laced in together. They turned toward the lift shaft. They hit the estate like a hammer. James and Ma moved through the halls side by side, silent and lethal. The guards weren't expecting resistance, let alone her Avenari soldiers dropped in 2s and 3s. Rena flanked them, blade fast, and clean smoke filled the corridors. Mintra's home had become a battlefield. At the command chamber doors, they paused. He's inside, she said. James nodded. Let's end it. They kicked the doors open. Coral was there, flanked by 2 guards. He barely had time to draw before Mater Puta bullet through his chest. The others froze, then dropped their weapons. It was over in seconds. James looked at her, blood on her face, blade still humming. Mint exhaled. My estate, my rules. He stepped in close, their breath mingling. No more chains, he said. She grabbed him by the collar, kissed him hard, and didn't let go. They watched the flames from the balcony. James leaned on the rail beside her, pulse rifles slung over his shoulder. Blood dried at his temple. "You sure you want to do this?" She didn't look at him. "I gave them my loyalty. They gave me silence when I needed help. Now they'll give me nothing unless I give them a reason to fear me, again." He nodded slowly. "I have a contact." Her eyes flicked toward him. "Earth-based, deep-cover shadow net. He owes me. If we give him access, we can be off-world in under 12 hours. May crossed her arms. Skin still streaked with soot. "You're asking me to betray my species, no?" James said. "I'm asking you to. Choose your future, not the one they built for you, the one you want." She was quiet below them. Rena torched the last room of vault that had once stored Mentara's strategic dossier. It lit the night orange when Mina finally spoke. Her voice was still. "Get him on comm." The contact answered in 2 rings. "James," the voice said, "didn't expect to hear from you again. Didn't expect to be calling." James replied, "I need safe extraction. 2 bodies, one of them's high value." There was a pause. "Anner, yes, but she's..." Flipping another pause, "Then she's in the room with you." "Yes, then I'll speak to her directly." James looked to Mint. She took the comm without hesitation. "This is Valcor," she said, a breath on the line. "You're serious? I have sector command override keys. Fleet positions, interceptor locations. You want leverage? I'm the whole vault, you know what this means," the voice said. "You're burning your home permanently." Ma didn't blink. "It was never home, it was a leash. You'll be watched, interrogated, scrutinized. I can handle it." She said, "Coordinates inbound. You have 9 hours to reach the extraction corridor. Bring nothing. No weapons, no backup. We'll be watching." The call ended. Mint handed the device back to James, then she exhaled. "You'd better be worth it." "Human," James looked at her. "You already decided that this is just the follow-through." She didn't deny it. Instead, she turned. Stepped close, her forehead touching his. "If I give them everything, and you give them me, I won't," he said. "Not unless you want me to. Then let's move." Below the estate, the skimmer was ready. Rena stood at the helm already, inputting the route to the extraction point. Drones still patrolled the sky, but they flew high. Now they knew something had shifted. James watched her. She was no longer just the commander, she was someone who had lost everything. "I betray my world for you," she said softly. "Don't betray me for yours." James didn't answer. He just reached out, took her hand, and didn't let go. The shuttle sealed behind them with a deep hydraulic hiss. James felt the pressure change instantly. Ma stood just inside the threshold, motionless, her sharp black eyes scanning everything, not in awe. This wasn't new to her. She'd seen Earthcraft before, fought against them. But now she was inside one, unshackled, unarmed, and not in control. She didn't like the feeling. The ship's pilot didn't look back from the controls. "You sit, you strap, and you don't speak unless I say." She snapped, "Orders from the top." Mintara's jaw clenched. James put a hand on her shoulder and steered her toward the rear hold. "Let it go," he said, under his breath. "They're jumpy. If I were them, I wouldn't trust you either." Just sat on the jump. Seat stiff and upright, James took the seat across from her. The shuttle vibrated as the engine spooled to full. "We'll hit low orbit in 3 minutes. The pilot called out. "Then we're on a burn vector to the exosing. You've got 10 hours in this tin box. Buckle up at 7,000 FT. The turbulence kicked in by 12,000 Rs. The sensors picked up an Avenari scout wing on intercept course." "Eyes up," the pilot barked. "We've got company. 1 shuttle heavy pursuit. They're coming fast." James leaned forward, straining against the harness. "How the hell did they find us?" Mayara's voice was cool. "Deadly internal sensor tags. They buried them in council-issued robes. I should have known." The pilot pulled hard. Right G-forces slammed them sideways. "Well, that's just beautiful hope. You like flying like rats in a blender." May unstrapped weapons bay. "Sit down, traitor." James jumped up before anyone else could react. "She fights better than your whole team put together. Let her work." The pilot didn't argue. She just opened the compartment. Mint stepped inside and came out in war mode. Pulse rifle slung plasma discs at her hip, armor plates already magnetized to her chest and thighs. She moved down the corridor to the back hatch like she'd never lost command in the first place. James followed her. "You're not Earth military," she said. "Walking. Not really, no. Then what are you?" He gave her a half smile. "A mistake. They never stopped." Using you're more than that. The rear hatch slid open, wind howled. The Avenari scout ships were close now, 3 of them. Black and fast fangs bared weapons, warming. Ma turned to him. You fly, she said. I shoot. They reached the cockpit seconds later. The pilot stared. You know how to fly this. James slid into the seat better than anyone still on Earth. The scout ships fired. The first salvo plasma bursts, ripping past the hull. The shuttle rocked, alarms blaring. Manta opened fire with the rear turret. Her voice clipped and cold. I've got one mark tagging the others. James pushed the throttle to maximum. The shuttle surged forward, engines screaming. He yanked the stick into a barrel roll, just avoiding another. Hit the sky, went from black to star. Speckled blue in a flash as they hit high atmosphere Manti. Era clipped one of the scouts. It spun out, trailing fire, 1 down. James banked left. 2 more, give me angle. He dropped the nose, pulled a spin, and Ma took the shot. Mid-roll second. Scout exploded. Into a flash of smoke and steel, third smarter. She growled, falling back, waiting for reinforcements. We'll beat them to the sling. Hope your handler's not cheap, she muttered. Or we're both space dust. The sling station came into view, just a blinking nav. Beacon in the dark, this is it. James said, angling and docking in 90 seconds. Mint kept her eyes on the rear sensors. Scout's back and he's brought 2 friends. I can't outfly them and dock us. Then go, Doc. She stood, unslung her rifle, and moved toward the hatch again. Wait, Ma, she turned once. If I die, you get to Earth. You finish this, you're not dying. Her smile was sharp. You keep saying that like it's up to you. James docked the shuttle hard. The latch clanged and the tunnel sealed around them with a vacuum hiss. He ran to the hatch and found her waiting, still alive, smoke curling from the barrel of her rifle. She was breathing hard, bleeding at the shoulder. But standing, I thought, don't. She cut him off. Get me inside. He pulled her arm over his shoulder and helped her into the airlock inside the station. 2 agents waited. They scanned both of them, then nodded. You're clear. James helped Malauer herself to a bench. One of the agents handed him a med kit as he worked on her shoulder. He met his eyes. This is what it feels like, she asked. To lose everything? No, he said quietly. This is what it feels like to start over. She leaned into him. Not a kiss, not heat, just a moment, and maybe the first flicker of peace. The Earth's sky was a sickly shade of orange as the re-entry thrusters cut and the shuttle dropped below the cloud deck. Dry heat blasted the viewport far below the Mojave Basin. Stretched wide and barren, sun-scorched ground cracked open like a wound. James stared down at it in silence. 1 final exile. Point 1 last line they'd crossed together behind him. Minta watched, arms folded tight across her chest as if bracing herself against a planet that had never asked for her. We're home, he said. They disembarked into wind and heat, flanked by armed Earth agents in matte gray armor. Strip your weapons, surrender your gear, walk single file. James caught Ma's eye once, as they were led to separate holding transports. She gave him a slight nod, her version of I'm still with you, then they were gone. The next 72 hours were an eraser. James underwent biometric re-identification, debriefed on every interaction, every word Mina had spoken in his presence. Every move she made they didn't care about. His bruises or his fractured rib, they cared about leverage. She gave us intel. What did she hide? He answered carefully. Just enough to keep them curious. He didn't know what they were doing to her, but he knew she wouldn't bend. Mental, or had once. Commanded fleets, survived assassins, outsmarted generals. Earth's analysts didn't stand a chance. 4 days in, they let them see her, a white room, bright lights, cameras in every corner, no furniture except a narrow steel bench where she sat, hands folded, in her lap. Motionless, her eyes found his the second the door opened. She looked tired but not beaten. He sat across from her, still breathing. He said, I should be asking you that. A pause, then quietly. They want to bury me. Not physically, just deep quiet. Somewhere I won't be a headline, they won't. James said, I won't let them. She tilted her head. You can't stop Earth's machine, no, he said, but I can jam the gears. She almost smiled. Almost. It took 2 more weeks for the council to stop debating by then. The Avenari were already signaling retribution. Tensions were climbing again, and Earth realized something it hadn't wanted to admit. Minta wasn't just a war prize. She was insurance. They relocated them to a secure facility. 2 hours outside Denver remote. Sterile, surveilled, but quiet aerial bed. Real food windows that weren't fake screens. Mint adjusted slowly. She hated the gravity, the softness of earth materials, the taste of everything. But James was there, and so was time. That helped some nights. She paced the apartment for hours, unable to sleep, tracing silent patterns in the dark. One night, she stopped beside the bed, staring at him. "You think I'm adapting?" She said. "I know you are, I'm not." She said. "Not really. I'm mimicking. I'm giving them a version of me they can live with." James sat up, the blanket falling from his chest. "Is that what you think I want too? A version?" "I don't know what you want," she said. "I only know you keep choosing me even when I wouldn't choose myself." He got out of bed, walked to her, took her face in both hands, slow and firm. "I don't want a version," he said. "I want the woman who made a world fear her, who burned her own empire just to be free." Her breath caught and he kissed her. Months passed. Earth monitored her closely but didn't interfere. Eventually, the drones stopped buzzing. The agents stopped asking questions. They weren't forgiven, but they were left alone sometimes. That's enough. They moved to a coastal outpost. After that, Mint grew leaner, stronger. Again, she trained in silence every morning. Old Avenari drills James couldn't name but admired just the same. And at night, she came back to his bed one night. She stood outside on the balcony, looking up at stars she used to fly through. James came out behind her. "They still watching?" she asked without turning. "Probably. I don't care anymore." He stepped beside her. "You don't miss it?" He asked. The power, the command she thought about. No, power wasn't power. It was just fear with medals on it. He nodded, then said what he'd wanted to say for weeks. "Then what do you want now?" She looked at him, the wind teasing her dark hair across her face. "You," she said, then quieter, but not like before. "Not because we were both broken then. Why? Because I chose you and fire and exile in every way." She stepped in close. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," she whispered. James touched her cheek. "I don't want perfect." They kissed under the stars, and it was real, just peace earned together.